I'm still getting used to the whole StreamYard thing. So, all right, well, it is live right now. I'm trying to figure out where the head count is. So a lot of times there it is right there. Okay. A lot of times what we do is we do them straight off of YouTube when it's just us here. But when we want to have the split screen, I've got to go to a auxiliary platform to do that. So, all right. So if you're out there, start showing up, put your name in the list so we can see who all's out there. And we're going to get started on this right away. So I'll introduce Casey occasionally throughout the video here. And this is going to be Casey Holman that's going to be joining us tonight. And we've known Casey for quite a while and know that he has a farm / homestead up in the central part of Missouri. And we got a whole list of questions that I'm going to ask. And feel free, if you're watching, to go ahead and post questions in the comments here. And I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. To start with, though, if you have not done so yet, our YouTube channel is the Campfire Trail. And if you haven't done so yet, go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell on that so that you get more, so that you can be notified of the upcoming videos and live streams that we have. The other thing is that we have a newsletter that we put out. Basically, it's about a weekly thing. And if you want to participate in that, I will have a link below the video here once we kind of wrap this up. It may already be there. I don't remember if I put it in or not, but it will definitely be there, and you can sign up for the newsletter, and then you'll know, you'll get some of the interesting things that we're doing down here. And then also you'll get updates on whenever there's going to be a live stream also by email. So anything else that we need to talk about here before we get started?
Nope. Let's just
well, let's get started. Okay. So this is Casey Holman. Say hi, Casey.
Hello. How's everybody doing?
And this should be a good one. All of y'all's lives have been good. Okay. Yeah. That's Ken, by the way. So if you see KJ out there, that's Ken. And Casey and we, I don't know, we kind of got connected up. Might have been through Craig. I don't remember if that was the case or not, but we got connected up probably about 10 years ago. I think we were figuring it up.
Isn't it more than that?
Maybe. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But I found Casey to be a kindred spirit of sorts because I'm a hopeless entrepreneur, and Casey is too. Wouldn't you say?
Yep.
Exactly. and entrepreneurs are people that constantly, their brain is constantly going 100 miles an hour and never stops. So we wake up in the middle of the night thinking of ideas. So, hey, Nancy, how you doing?
Yep.
And so I remember, I'm going to tell them one real quick story, and then we're going to get into have you kind of introduce yourself and what you do. But So Casey and I, our families were kind of both over in the Rockaway Beach, Missouri area. And one day, and it was getting along into the fall, and we were trying to decide how to bring more tourism into the Rockaway Beach area. And we were sitting up on the porch. Do you remember this, up at the Rainbow Haven, up on the deck up there, and talking about what we could maybe do at Christmas time. And the two of us hatched out an idea to turn a fishing island that was just off the coast there, the bank of the resort, into a Christmas island. And so we kind of hatched the whole idea out, took it to the city, got approval for it. And the next thing you know, we were out there with backhoes and things digging in new electrical lines so that they could string the whole island up with Christmas lights. And, that's still going on. It was still going on this past Christmas time too. So we started something over there that's still happening. So
that's really cool.
Yeah. So Casey, go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit. Talk a little about your operation up there. And I've got a whole list of questions to ask you as we get into it, but go ahead and take the stage here and tell a little bit about yourself and what you do.
All right. Well, I do appreciate it. I'm Casey Holman, and every now and then I might look up to the computer there. I'm not rolling my eyes. I'm just looking at my computer screen. But I am a multi-generational farmer here in Richmond, Missouri. And I grew up in a family that basically homesteaded and farmed in an old-fashioned way that I saw was being pushed to the wayside in place of large factory farming type row crops and things like that. We always lived on small farms and worked for each other to grow our crops and our animals and our gardens. And I always thought to myself, this is such valuable information and it's something that should be preserved. And as I got older and went to school, I saw even more that a lot of my friends and the children in school didn't have any idea about food and how it was made or produced. A lot of people thought, well, the milk just must come from the grocery store.
Yeah.
And so I thought, man, I got to do something. So I started the ministry, the Fraternal Order of the Mountain Man Ministries, in order to spread knowledge and skills, heritage skills like carving, wood crafting, canning food, something like building and mending your own things sounds simple to a lot of us, like me and you, Martin and Shelly.
Yeah.
We grew up doing this stuff, and it's just second nature to go out and fix the plumbing that breaks in the house, or the trailer breaks, we'll go out and weld on the trailer, stuff like that. A lot of folks don't get that experience. And so I'm kind of passionate about just collecting and spreading that knowledge to people. So I make the events called Homesteading in Missouri to do just that. What we do is collect different crafters, different builders, people that can put presentations on for food foraging or processing, and we'll have them come together for our events. It's a 2-day event in Richmond, Missouri, and this one will be in October, the 10th and 11th. And so that's kind of my thing. I enjoy farming, but I enjoy farming the old-fashioned way. A lot of folks now call it regenerative agriculture or organically growing things. But back at a time, that was just the way it was. That's just how it was done,
Yeah.
Like the livestock were grown to get the manure, and you used your manure to make your compost. And now we're rediscovering that those old ways just happen to be sometimes the easier or better way.
I was watching a short clip of a video of Joel Salatin, and he was talking about that very thing. And he would move his cows around in the different pastures that he has there, and then he would follow up whenever he moved the cows out. He'd move his chickens in, and his chickens would scratch around through all of the stuff and spread it all out. So he didn't even really need a manure spread.
They'd eat the bugs.
Yeah, and they'd eat the bugs and the parasites and things like that. So it was kind of fascinating to watch that. So anyway, go ahead and continue on there.
Oh, heck yeah. Well, along with the livestock and the animals and stuff like that, I really got interested in forestry as well, because farming, to a lot of folks, it was just row crops and your corn and your gardens and your livestock, but they didn't know a lot about their forestry. And you see the loggers come in and cut the trees. Well, the farmers would just sell to the loggers, and then that was it. That's all they really knew about the forest. So I decided I should learn about our asset, which is the forest, and how to maintain it. So I started studying timber stand improvement. Here in Missouri, we have what's called the best management practices and various other forestry programs that kind of teach about trimming the worst stuff first, basically, cutting out low-grade stuff and leaving your high-grade wood, trimming it, letting it grow. And things like having an uneven aged forest, which is more healthy than a canopy that's all matching each other. And the diversification that comes from trimming trees in areas, you get new growth where sometimes you would never cut it and it will never, regenerate by itself.
That makes sense.
Go ahead, Martin.
Yeah. No, I was just saying that makes good sense. Yeah.
All right. So a lot of your old farmers, especially, they figured, well, a forest is a forest and it's better off just staying the way it is. Well, it turns out a forest is kind of like a garden, in which your trees are going to get old and die eventually. You have to either use them or lose them. It's a longer term proposition. An oak tree might last 150 years, but one day it's going to get struck by lightning or it's going to rot, and nobody gets anything from that resource. And that was a long time growing, so it's kind of a big loss. So if you harvest on a schedule, use your wood for products like firewood, kindling, lumber. You could sell them to the sawmill, sell logs to the sawmill and things like that for money too. So yeah, I like to learn about the whole aspect of land stewardship, I guess you would say, basically.
Yeah. Now, do you, when you're, I guess, thinning or clearing a little bit of forest, and do you go through the process on your land? Do you go through the process of replanting, or do you just let all that occur naturally?
Okay, well, that's an interesting topic because you see in like the Pacific Northwest where you have primarily pine trees and spruce and fir type timber.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that type of timber can't really regrow from the stump or seed. So you'll have to plant that stuff back mainly once you harvest it.
Uh-huh.
But in a hardwood timber, if you have oaks and hickories and walnuts, your seed bank in your dirt is so rich. Once you trim out an area, you have an abundance of small trees starting to sprout.
Yeah.
And regrow. So your next 5 to 10 years, you're thinning out what's regrowing.
Yeah,
So you're producing more than you're getting.
We have cleared a couple of little spots down here, and we're really only about three and a half years onto the property. And the places that we've cleared they're just bristling with new growth of stuff. Mostly it would be from acorns. It would be oak trees and
cedar trees too.
And cedar trees a little bit, and the hickories, they do that. And then what we really have an abundance of here is dogwoods. And if you clear out a little spot in the woods for any reason, whatever it is, if we cleared out so our cabin is 400 square feet, just roughly maybe 20 by 20, something like that. And if you cleared out that kind of a spot out in the woods around here, there'd be 1,000 dogwood trees growing in it by the next spring.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Yeah. No,
that's the thing.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that's the thing. If you let it regrow like that, that's one way to manage your forest. But sometimes I will change what's there. Like if it's a poor lot of timber and you're not going to grow anything valuable, it wouldn't be a bad idea to go and plant you some walnuts or maybe some nut trees or oak trees. So sometimes we do that at my timber and other timbers. But on a whole, a hardwood timber is really efficient at regrowing itself.
Yeah, that's why I grew up I lived down here in Southwest Missouri for a couple of years when I was a kid, and then we moved back down to the area probably 35 years ago. And so I've been here, and I've had friends and farmers that have had farms down here where they've gone in and brush hogged a big area out. And I can tell you that in this area, when you brush hog a big area out, within maybe 2 or 3 seasons, you'll have a thick stand of oaks and hickories and cedars and things like that growing up in that spot where you almost can't walk through it. It's so thick. So that's a good point. Now, a few years ago, kind of when we lost track of each other there for a while, you were looking at getting a sawmill. Did that ever happen?
We did. We ended up buying a sawmill for a little while, and then we basically ran into a point where I made more money with firewood than we were with the lumber. So the lumber we were cutting, like walnut and oak, it seemed to me it was easier to use it for my own building than to sell it, because there's so many sawmills in my area. And I figured, well, I'll just keep building with my own lumber and not really use a sawmill commercially.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, sawmills are always fascinating to me because we owned one back way a long time, 40 years ago, I guess. So, okay. Well, let's go back to the farm operations here a little bit. And one of the things that I want to get into, so for those of you that are out there, we're gonna sneak into this here in a minute. I know that you've got lots of different things going on to earn income off the farm, or to turn some cash off your farm. And we're going to get into that. I'm going to ask you a few questions on that. But for right now, if you don't mind talking about it, how big of a property do you have there? Just you?
Yep. So myself, we have 100 acres on top of the hill here. And that includes basically 2 separate properties. There's 100 and then there's a 20 attached to each other.
Okay.
So 120, sorry.
All right.
And my 20 is almost all timber. The 100 is about 60 acres field space we use for hay, and the rest is timber.
Okay.
And technically, as far as my livestock goes, I have my dry lot for my cows, which is where I keep them when it's muddy or when I don't want them on the field. Between that and a few other things around the house, we only have about 3 to 4 acres that's dedicated livestock space within that 120 acres.
Okay.
Now, when the cows are out, they're out in the big field in the 60 acres. We rotate them on about 3 or 4 patches. It depends. So, like I said, a lot of the regenerative agriculture you hear about now is just the old ways they used to do it. So,
Yeah.
my grandpa had cows, and he always had them on about 3 different patches. He would rotate the 3 spots. And by the time it got to the end of the year, they'd made probably 3 or 4 rotations through those 3 separate areas. And so we always basically try to do it similar to him. I have 4 spaces. They go technically from my front, and they mosey their way section by section to the back, and then they'll come back to the front. So, yeah, it's a family farm. We used to operate. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, is that primarily beef production, or do you have any kind of dairy in there?
I do beef. Yep.
Okay.
I like Angus and I like black and white faced cows. So basically, I've thought about getting dairy cows, but then I know some people that run dairies and they're just constantly running. They're constantly maintaining those cows.
So
beef cows are hard enough, but
with your acres, like your first plot of woods, or hay out there for the cows, how big is that one lot?
So I have the first 2 are very small. They're set up into about 3.4 acre to 4 acre lots.
Okay.
And then once they get to the big field, there's 2 spaces in the main field that's about 25 and then a 30.
Okay. So how many cows do you put on there per?
On my place, I could run about 30, 32 cows.
Okay.
And I'll be okay. I don't have to supplement with hay. But right now I have 8 cows and 2 bulls.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, what we're gonna do this year is I had a bull die last year. And what we're doing this year is changing up our bull program. And so hopefully I'm gonna double the number next year of my cows. So we'll be back to 16. Yeah.
And so what do you have in the way of, or do you have any smaller livestock, or is it all just, what have you got there?
Yep. So we've raised many Nigerians, the mini goats.
Okay.
Those are okay. Yeah, they're something else. So they're excellent for a small farmstead, but you have to have good fences, and you have to not mind your little billy goats getting into mischief.
Yeah.
Other than that, they're not bad. But I prefer sheep. We got into hair sheep some time ago, and so I have what's called Katahdin hair sheep, and they are excellent foragers, and they're awesome to run with your cows. They don't require any shearing, which is awesome. And the thing is, they balance out the worm load on your cows. The things that a cow is susceptible for, the sheep will basically destroy in their cycling of their stomach and their processes.
Really?
And the same with the sheep. Some of the parasites a sheep is susceptible to, they will die in the cow herd. So it kind of balances your worm load to run the sheep after your cows and vice versa.
That's interesting. So you have a flock right now of sheep?
Yes, sir.
And
we're trying to.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say we're trying to get about 20 to 30 ewes total. Is what I kind of want to be at. Sheep.
Okay. And you said they were hair sheep. Now, and you don't have to shear them. That's something new to me. So what is that?
Yeah, I never heard of that before.
Yep. So that's an interesting thing. before I was really into sheep, I had never even thought about it. But I have a neighbor, the Oggs, Roger Ogg. He has the same type of sheep, and I noticed years ago he used to shear the sheep. Then all of a sudden, I never seen him shear the sheep again. But he had a whole bunch of sheep. So I thought, and yeah, I started learning the hair sheep will actually grow their hair, then shed it by themselves at the end of the year. Yep.
Like in one
Some
big
people
mat?
collect it. Kinda. Sometimes it will literally be one big mat,
Really?
like the whole shape of the back of the sheep. Yep. Sometimes it just flakes off,
Oh,
Some
that's
people
weird.
collect it and use it as garden mulch. It's really excellent for your
Is that right?
gardens, and yep. And you can also use it for fiber and make yarn with it. But
Okay.
the other thing that's really cool about the hair sheep is they don't have lanolin. They don't have a lanolin flavor in their meat like your wool sheep do.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. So they're a little more clean. I don't know. I call it a little milder, a little more clean flavor in the meat.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was a teenager, I worked at a place. It was a tanning plant up in Iowa where we live, and they processed all they processed was sheepskins, and so for about 7 hours a day, I worked there while I was still in high school. So it'd be high school until 3 o'clock, and then by 3:30 I had to clock in. Then I worked till I think 10 at night every day, and handling that sheepskin all night long and the wool in there, even though they'd been tanned and washed and cleaned and processed, they were still full of lanolin. And my hands were the softest, in the entire family. And just because handling all of that stuff all the time. So sheep, I would I guess I would kind of consider that sort of a mid-sized livestock. Do you do the chickens or rabbits or anything like that, or guineas, or what have you got in that regard?
We have Rowan ducks. We don't have any chickens right now because I'm redoing my chicken system. We had a groundhog break into what I thought was an impenetrable force of a huge setup we had going. And so now we're totally revamping the chicken coop. What I raise when I do raise chickens are a silver lace Wyandotte or a golden lace Wyandotte, heritage breeds that were, well, the thing is, they are almost double in size of what you see at the hatcheries. Or say if you go to Tractor Supply and buy your chicks, buy a silver lace Wyandotte, the colors are not going to be the same. They're not going to be to breed standard, and they're going to be really small compared to these heritage bred birds. And I get them from a place called Brown's Farmstead. They produce some of those chickens for historical reenactments. And there's a place called Watkins Mill over by Excelsior Springs.
I'm familiar with
take
that,
those chickens there. Yep. So some of those silver lace Wyandottes go over to the Watkins Mill heritage kind of festivals. And it's really cool because the color is so brilliant. And I can't say perfect, but close to perfect as far as the breed standard in the books. And hefty birds. And but other than that, we like our Rowan ducks. They're also very big as far as many ducks are kind of smaller, but the Rowans get really, really big, I think. And so
what's the purpose for raising ducks?
We like the eggs. The meat's okay, but we like the eggs. But the ducks are kind of like a choice, just an aesthetic choice. I like to hear them, and they have a pond down there they play in, so it's kind of a cool thing just to have the ambience of the ducks.
The ducks around there creating some atmosphere, some woodsy backwoods atmosphere.
Yep.
All right. Well,
it's funny.
Let's. I'm gonna remind everybody to hit the subscribe button, the notification bell on the channel, and also remind that I'm going to be putting links to Casey's organizations below the video here after we get done. And a lot of times, Casey will have on the days following one of the live videos, we'll have, maybe 3 or 4 times as many viewers pop in on it and pick up information after the fact. So when they can look at it at their leisure. I know I've got cousins that come on here pretty frequently, and I haven't seen them here tonight, but she has to work on Tuesday night. So a lot of times they miss this thing. So anyway, just remember to check out the things below the video here in the comments or in the description, and there'll be how to get a hold of Casey. I guess it's okay to have them contact you some way through email or something like that.
Sure. Yep,
okay.
That'd be great.
All right. Okay, well, let's. I'm going to go down kind of this list a little that you sent me, and one of the things that we'd kind of talked about was there, what kind of a challenge is it to decide to take the first step in planning before you go into doing something like this or doing a homestead or a small farm? What are the things you have to think about? What do you have to prepare yourself for?
Yes, that's true. If you want to do homesteading or farming on a small scale, you have to really be 100% because it's a lot to do. A lot of people, they think, well, it's all fun and games, and they see the YouTube and it looks really nice, but they don't understand the back end, which is a lot of work, and you have to do maintenance and your own, basically everything yourself. And if you can't, well, you have to spend the money on people that can do it for you, which almost defeats the purpose. Yep. And so, if you're thinking about doing it, you need to research, and then you need to talk to people in your area that are doing it. A lot of the older farmers, like I say, they kind of grew up doing what we call homesteading, and they can tell you things about your local area, hardships you're going to run into in the wintertime that you might not think about. Yeah. Especially if you have animals, water is going to be important. Things that you may not really, things that you take for granted if you're living in town, your road conditions, things like that. It's all stuff you really have to think about before you plunge into the world of homesteading.
Yeah. Speaking of roads, okay, so I am connected to quite a number of Facebook groups out there, and one of them is over at Rockaway. And the funny thing is that whenever there's been a rain or snow or something like that, the page lights up with people. Who's going to come and take care of the road? How soon are they going to get out of here? All of that. It's like, hey, if I want my road taken care of, I got to go hop on the tractor and go do it.
Yeah.
Yep. That's the thing out here in the country where we're at. A lot of us farmers, that if you want the road cleared, you have to go do it yourself.
Yep.
The maintenance, they're okay on the highway, but as far as the gravel out here, they basically skip it until the weather's nice.
And then all the snow is gone, and
Yep.
Well, you'd mentioned the commitment to livestock, and we've never had anything in the way of livestock beyond just a bunch of rabbit hutches and rabbits, and we grew those for a while for meat. And this was when we were way young, like in our 20s, I guess it was, and we're way beyond that now. But that's one of the reasons why we chose not to do livestock here where we're at least not right now, is just because the commitment that it takes to take care of it, the care and handling and nurturing of it. And there's 5-foot gardens. Hello there. Glad to have you on here tonight. Yeah. We're here with Casey Holman.
Hello.
And talking about farmsteads and homesteads. So we chose specifically, intentionally not to have livestock of any kind here right now. Now we may go into small. I don't think we'll ever do large livestock. We have friends that raise large livestock and better suited to it than what we would be, because we only have 12 acres down here. And but we may consider the smaller stuff at some point, but it won't be until we have our house built and some other things, just because we're getting old enough where it's too much to do one thing, much less 12 things. So.
I know the feeling.
Yeah, and I also, I might have you mention this just a little bit too, and that is we had, I don't know, I may have been watching a video on this, but they were talking, but this is something I kind of harp on all the time, and that is when you're starting to consider making that first step, all of it can feel very overwhelming. anywhere from the price of land to, doing the things that you have no clue or how to do right now. And that you're going to have to learn. I'm sort of getting too old for doing the learning curves. I mean, the older I get, the fewer learning curves that I want to go through. And so there's a lot of that very intimidating stuff from finding and buying land to deciding that you're really going to actually do that. And really this guy that I was watching, I remember who it was now, but he said, really buying the land or acquiring land is really the second biggest obstacle. And most people think it's the first biggest obstacle, but he says the first biggest obstacle is just getting you to the point internally where you've got the courage and you've built up what it takes to make that decision and make that plunge. And do you find that to be true? Do you believe?
I think so. I think getting people to take that first step is like the biggest hurdle. A lot of people have the idea and they want to be on the land and more self-sufficient, but getting them out of the comfort zone and on the land is another thing.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
It can be very intimidating. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
okay,
that's the
so
thing.
We've got Jamie Janet here. Now, she's been here before, and she says, where I live, livestock is not possible due to the mountain lions and coyotes wanting anything that moves.
Oh, boy.
So, fortunately, we don't have to deal with that. I mean, we've got bears down here, and we do have mountain lions, and we do have bobcats are probably the bigger threat to livestock around here than the bears and the mountain lions are.
Coyotes.
And we got coyotes. Yeah, they're kind of a threat too. What do you deal with up there as far as predators?
We do have a lot of coyotes around, and we have bobcats. We have livestock dogs that kind of keep a lot of the coyotes away, and they're always out there barking all night, chasing stuff.
Is that right?
Every now and then I'll find evidence that they've dispatched a coyote or two here and there, so they do an excellent job. Yep.
What breed of dogs do you use?
We have Great Pyrenees, and we'll have Anatolian Shepherds.
Okay.
I also have I have 2 pit bull type dogs, and I have 1 Doberman type dog that's more of a personal protection type animal.
Yeah.
The Great Pyrenees and the Anatolians will spend their day outside, and they don't really stay close to people as much. But the pit bull and the flower dog, I call her, which she stays close to people really well. They're really people orientated. And so I have like a multi-layered dog protection system out here. The conservation department claims that,
What would they call that? Tactical approach, huh?
Yeah. Ironically, they say the Dobermans were bred from a mailman. He was actually needing a dog to protect himself when he was out and about delivering mail. And it makes really good sense the way the dogs act. They follow you great, and they don't let anything get close to you. So it's awesome.
Yeah. So
Jamie Janet, of course,
Chihuahua.
She has a Chihuahua.
Yeah. They can be fairly fearless, though.
Yes. Well, I have a dog that is actually a Chihuahua and a pug crossed. He's one of our smallest and oldest dogs. He's our oldest dog, yeah. His name's Teddy.
Teddy.
He thinks he's a big dog. He's very brave.
So I guess he hangs out with the big dogs, so he just figures he's one of them, huh?
Yep. It's very funny. But, dogs are excellent as far as coyotes go. And they'll even keep out small stuff like raccoons and bobcats.
Yeah.
I even had a dog. We lost him. He would stand on my trampoline and bark at all the hawks flying over.
Is that right?
Yep.
It was on a trampoline. Would he try to bounce to get him or what?
Oh, man.
Hey, so one of the other things that we had kind of talked about was breaking ground and the process of building shelter, hooking up power, all that kind of stuff. Now, if I understand right, you went through all of that on your land. Is that correct?
Yep. Me and my wife decided we wanted to do the whole thing from the ground up just to experience it and to live it. I've always farmed and kind of homesteaded, but we always had the family homes on the property that are old. So I wanted to do it from the ground up myself. I wanted to see what my great grandpas did and what it took, you know what I mean, kind of. And so we started with a camper. We lived in the camper for about 6 months while we built the foundation in our first cabin.
Yeah.
Hooking it up to septic and power and water. Our water's off grid. Our power is still on the grid, though. That's the only thing. Our water's off grid in a cistern. We pump it. We haul that water with basically big tanks in our trucks.
Okay.
And so, yep, the main house is hooked.
Time out a second on the water there. So do you have a well on the property, or are you bringing it in from someplace else?
We have 2 wells, but neither one of them are hooked to the house. We actually haul the water from town for the house.
Okay. And then you just put it in a storage system of some kind.
Yes. It's called a cistern. It's basically like a big well. It's shallower and much wider. We can hold about 2,000 gallons at a time in the cistern.
All right.
And then it pumps into the house into a what's called a pressure tank. And the pressure tank actually feeds the pipes and the plumbing and stuff.
Okay. All right. There was, and I mean, I've seen properties that have had cisterns on them, and they've been brick lined cisterns. And our kids have they call it a cistern, but basically it's a big storage tank. That's a polymer type of a storage tank that they've got that will hold, I think, 500 or 700 gallons of water. And they will cycle it through there. Now, do you have to treat the water ever when you're doing that?
Sometimes, yep. So the water from town, it's already chlorinated, but the tank can get dirty and stuff might fall in the hole, and stuff like that. So, yep, we'll treat it with a shock treatment, kinda, I guess you'd call it.
Okay.
It's just a chlorinated shot, and we'll put it in there for 3 or 4 days. It'll kind of smell like bleach, you know, but just don't drink that water. Once it's clear, it's good. It's good again for about a year.
Okay. So it's about an annual treatment.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I just wanted to find out a little bit more about how you're dealing with the water, because when we came down here, we didn't have, it was during COVID, and the well driller guys were probably 8 to 9 months out on their scheduling. And we did have rural water that ran across the front of the property here. Hey, Lily. And, across the front of the property, and we were able to tap that in. I mean, it still took about 2 months for them to get organized to get us water, but so we did that. But we were looking at a storage tank or a cistern type storage down here for a temporary. It just happened to be that they were able to get the water hooked up before we actually moved on to or about the same time that we moved on to it. So we didn't have to go through all of that.
Yeah. City water has its merits, and rural water, it would be excellent and handy if I could just turn my knobs on no matter what, and it's always there.
Yeah.
But it's cool, you know, you can haul it yourself and it's self-sufficient, but we have a property across the highway. It has a rural water meter, but we're never over there and we never get to use that. So
I see.
But we paid for, I think it's about $40 a month just for about 1,600 gallons. So comparatively, it's very cheap. I mean, it's not bad at all. But I think hauling our water, we spend about 9 quarters for a 400-gallon tank in our truck. So what, $2 and a quarter? Yep. And so it's pretty economical that way too. But you have your gas and your time.
Right. Yeah. But we have up where we have the tree houses over here. Occasionally we've had the well go down, and in the busy part of the season, we have to get water, and we can get it from town. And I think I think it cost us $12 to fill a 1,000-gallon tank. And so it's like, that's a fairly cheap way of getting by in an emergency.
Yeah.
So you've got the off-grid water. You still have grid supplied power, and I guess you built the entire house that you've got there.
Yes, sir. Well, the house I'm sitting in right now was actually built by my great-great-grandpa.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yep.
And so
I
now
think
you're
I cut out a second there.
okay. So the house that you're in right now, that's an older one. And is that on your property? And is that where you live?
Yes. So, yep. So the main house, what they call it, is where I'm sitting right now. But the cabin I built, which is about 100 yards to the back of me,
Okay.
that is the one we did from ground up. It's about 1,100 or 1,200 square foot.
Okay.
We started with the cabin, and it was, I think, 580 square foot if you include the loft space.
Okay.
And that, when we were really thinking about doing it, we thought the tiny home movement was a good idea.
Right.
The tiny home, this minimalist type of deal.
Yeah.
Well, we had the children, and we decided we needed a bigger home.
Right.
So we added on to that, made it 1,100 square foot. I think it's about 1,200. And so I built everything from scratch. I built the cabin, and I built the addition. I built the addition pole barn style, basically, where I sunk 5x5 oak posts in the ground and concrete.
Yeah.
And I built the roof completely lean-to style flat roof. It's about 28 foot long and about 20 foot wide, attached to the cabin. And so it has 2 bathrooms now, which is back in the day, the house I'm in now, it only has 1 bathroom because back then they never wanted, they didn't need extra fancy stuff. And nowadays we have extra children, and it's easier just to have multiple bathrooms.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I also, one of the cool things about the cabin, in the second bathroom, we, instead of putting a traditional tub, we have a giant stock tank, basically looking tank.
Yeah.
It's a rustic hot tub setup.
Yeah. So did you, before you started building any of the structure, did you have the skills and knowledge of how to do construction like that? Or is that something you sort of learned along the way?
Well, see, I kind of grew up dabbling and helping my parents and grandparents build things around the farm. Mm-hmm. And I also kind of started working at roofing when I was 15, commercial roofing on houses and buildings. So I learned some stuff there. I also kind of dabbled in framing houses, so I had some experience. But that's the thing. Since I was a really little kid, I was always hands-on trying to learn stuff and do stuff. Like my grandpa had taught me how to use a chainsaw when I was probably, 8 or 7 years old. Really young.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I think to myself, I wouldn't give my children some of these tools, but the old timers are like, they're like, you're going to learn today. And that's an excellent way to teach people, it turns out. It was either,
I could just hear him say that.
When we were living down here when I was a kid, it was my first chance of running a chainsaw, and I was 11 years old, or was I 11? Mm-hmm. Actually, I was 10. I was 10 and just turned 11. I turned 11 when I was down here. My first birthday that I had down here was 11, and Dad, he taught me how to run a chainsaw. Back then, this was like the early 70s. He had a big Homelight chainsaw. It must have weighed 40 pounds. It was huge. It wasn't any bigger than like the ones I've got now, but it weighed like 4 times as much.
Well, you're 11 too. That's gonna be.
And I'm the same way. It's like I'd be almost terrified to put those kind of things in kids' hands.
Yeah.
But I guess we lived on the edge, didn't we?
And ironically, I never really got hurt when I was young, as much as you would think you would. But I've been hurt by chainsaws in my older days because I got into commercial logging and stuff, which it's just all day, every day chainsaw use. So you have to expect some injuries there, But when I was young, I got, stitches here and there from mainly silly stuff, tripped and hit your face on a piece of wood or something like that. But it was never the tools. I think it was, like I said, growing up with the people around me, they were always building stuff and repairing stuff, welding on the tractors, different things like that. So I picked up on everything so young.
Yeah.
And that helped. And by the time I was ready to build my entire cabin, the things that I didn't know, I learned along the way. I taught myself. I watched some YouTube videos, things like that. I probably asked you stuff here and there.
Yeah.
Just learning how you can. That's the same thing I did with forestry. When I first got into forestry, I thought, who's the smartest people in the timber that I could find? So I went up to Jamesport and found the Amish sawmills. And some of those guys, yep, excellent teachers. They broke stuff down for me really good.
Yeah.
And they taught me things that, heck, it'd be hard to find somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. I can believe that.
Yeah.
Hey, you know, when we were talking about the whole forestry thing a little bit ago, if you see in the comments, Lillian Robertson there, Lily is my cousin, and her husband's name is Dave, and they met each other out on a forestry project. They were tree planters, and I don't remember. Maybe Lily, maybe you can put in there how many. It seems like they would plant like 3,000 trees a day or something like that. It was like, holy cow, I don't know. But anyway, that's where they met each other, was out and planting trees all over the South, and always got a kick out of that story. So yeah. One of the other things I kind of wanted to talk to you about is we had on the list here was planning and developing longer term plans, like fruit trees or growing space like in greenhouses or high tunnels, getting kids involved. We were at a stage when we decided to do this that really our kids were grown adults by that time, and while they have an interest from a distance, they're really not interested in any of the hands-on kind of stuff now. So how do you deal with?
My grandkids love.
Well, the grandkids love it, because it's just a thing for them to do. They're young enough right now where
grandma plant.
As long as they're in the middle of something activities, then they're good with that. But
I think they like.
Check this out, Mrs. T with the T. See, I don't know for sure who that is. Well, welcome aboard here.
Welcome aboard.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you do? How have you gone through long-term planning? And I mean, forestry is one of those things where you have to plan long-term because everything grows so slow. But as far as planning out your homestead or farm, and then getting, the next generation, because you're like generation, what, number 5 or number 4 or 5?
So what I can really track easily, I'm probably about 5 or possibly 6 in the Ray County area, Ray and Lafayette County.
Okay. Yep. And I mean, one of the most important principles to me for anything that's generational, whether it's generational farming or generational wealth or whatever it is like making that next generation an active participant in it, whatever it is. And so what are you doing to have them and your kids involved, not only just the planning of the farm or the homestead, but actually planning for the future generations of your kids?
That's the thing. I think a lot of the predicaments America's in right now is because so many families are like 3rd and 4th generation removed from a farm. A lot of our parents and grandparents were on the farm, and then you move to jobs and people move to town. And so I'm trying to reverse that process. Getting the kids involved is kind of hard sometimes if they're not interested in what you're doing. Yeah. Especially if it's hard work. They might see it as really hard and it's tedious now, but when you're 30 or 40, you're going to think, man, it's not as bad as I thought, because you have to work somewhere else and it's going to be hard and tedious too. Yeah. But I try to instill the value that it's ours and we have to work towards it and keep it. Yeah. And it's something we can pass down, but instilling that, it's like you have to do projects they like to do. You have to try to get animals they like or whatever. That helps. But I think it really is important, because the children now, if you die and they just sell the land, all the work is just gone. Yeah. It's not really a thing that you can just take lightly. And like my oldest boy, he gets it. Sometimes if you want him to work with you and do stuff all day, he might complain about that stuff here and there. But he knows in his head that it's important, because a whole time he was growing up, I explained to him, I'm like, this is our place, and it's yours when I'm gone. And it's like we have to keep it and work. But as far as my oldest daughter, now she's not as hands-on on the farm. So getting her involved is even harder. I think once she gets older and maybe comes back in like a management position or something like that will be more interesting for them in that aspect. My youngest is growing up in the mix of all of it.
Yeah.
Where my oldest boy, we kind of missed a few things that we've done.
Yeah.
And so, but my youngest, he's been through the mix of everything. And I think he's going to be the most, what do you call it? I don't know. He's like the most apt, I think, to really pick up the spirit to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Well, boy, go ahead.
Well, I suppose when it comes to kids, it's different if all of a sudden they get to become teenagers and you try to move them into that awareness, I guess. There's a bit of a resistance because it's something that's different and not what they're used to or accustomed to. But if they're raised right up in it, I mean, they'll reach those years and really kind of not know that there's any other way.
It'll be normal.
Yeah. So it's a normal process of life at that point with those. And that's probably one of the challenges that we've had too, is that we've, we've kind of introduced our kids to things, after they became adults, because a lot of times that's when we're discovering them ourselves. And they just, they sort of get it, but they don't really get it. But now I've got my daughters are both in their 40s now, and they're both kind of started edging their way towards this kind of a life, and they see the benefits of it compared to some of the things that they've experienced as adults themselves. So we're kind of glad to see that. It's just, it feels like you're starting way behind and trying to play catch up.
Well, not really. But they keep remembering back when they did.
Well, they do, but they don't have the hands-on experience.
Right,
so,
not the hands-on. Yeah. Well, they can get that though.
Yep.
That's interesting that you're able to bring the youngest generation there into the picture right away. And you say he's 4?
Yeah.
Okay.
4 years old. Yep.
See, our grandkids are about 4.
Yeah.
In that range. Okay.
Marina's
and
4.
4, 5, and 6, or 4, 5, and 7, 4, 6, and 7, something like that.
4, 5, and 6.5.
She'll correct me on that. Yeah. She'll tell me to the day how old they are.
I know their ages.
But they love it. They love coming down to Grandpa and Grandma's place and playing around in the garden and playing around in the woods and all that kind of stuff. So we'll have a little bit of an opportunity to introduce that generation into this, I think, almost better than we did our own kids. So
we weren't living on a farm when they were growing up.
Yeah, well, that's part of the downside of it. So the importance of getting started, right?
Exactly. That's the thing. Like my middle boy, we spent a lot of time traveling and doing the resort stuff. So we lived at the farm when we were here, but it wasn't full-time farming. And so he really missed out on that very beginning stages. But like I said, I think he's coming around. He understands. He sees the value in the cows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yes, the young ones that you can introduce when they're super young and just let them grow up, man, I think they're going to have a grasp on the whole concept of homesteading and living more for yourself. I think it's got a lot to do with working for yourself and not having to work somewhere else for somebody else. That's a lot of it for me. Like, I'd rather work 12-hour days and bust my butt in the sun than go 8 hours for somebody's work and have to make their money just to be able to afford food. It's like, well, we could work on our own gardens and make our own food and skip the middleman there.
That reminds me of one of my favorite quotes about entrepreneurs. Us entrepreneurs would rather work 12 hours for ourselves than work 8 hours for somebody else.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's true.
Well, let's kind of wrap this. Is there anybody out there that has any questions for Casey? While I'm thinking of it here, we've got some comments come through there. I see Lily said that the average day of planting trees was about 2,000. But they had occasionally it was up to 3,500 or so. That's a lot of trees to
And
plant in a
Dave
day.
did race.
Mhm.
They had a race,
lot of
and they did
trees.
6,000.
Yeah,
I can
Dave
see
did 6,000 trees in one day.
that. That's a
Wow.
competitive spirit there.
Yeah, and Dave and Lily, I like them a lot. They're my cousins, but we really love them, and they've got a farm up in southeast Iowa, and it's about 100 acres, something like that. And they for a long time it was like a playground. I mean, they set it up to just play on it, and they're kind of thinking about doing some different kinds of expansion now that involves some income. But they have that kind of, I would call it a pioneer spirit about them too, and really they're not afraid to do anything, try anything new, and it's a lot of fun just hanging out with them. Let's, if you don't mind, I was going to kind of lean into one other thing, but I don't want to forget forget this, because this is very, very important to a lot of people, especially when they're just first starting to think about getting out onto a piece of land. Is how are you going to make a living on it? What are your income sources going to have to look like? And okay, so everybody that's out there kind of involved tonight, if that is a concern about how to generate income on a property like this, make a comment about it. Let me know. I mean, this is something that I might lean on Casey a little bit to come in and do a whole podcast segment on is just creating income, because I know that he's done quite a few things. We've done quite a few things, and between us, I mean, I think we can really cover a lot of ground on how to make creative kind of income on your property. But what are some of the things that you're doing? I mean, if you don't mind talking about it, I don't think we're going to be giving up like trade secrets or anything like that, but whatever you're comfortable with, why don't you let them know some of the possibilities of what they can kind of be thinking about?
So that's just it. Yep. Making income from your farm can look way different for many different people. Me, I have a lot of hedge wood. People love hedge posts and firewood. So I cut hedge posts. That's one thing. I cut hedge firewood. We have tons of other types of hardwoods we cut firewood with. I can make lumber. Like I said, I can make lumber, but I don't like to do it a lot because I like to build with the wood more than selling the wood. Yeah. Because I think there's more value in it that way. I'd rather build a bench or build a frame in a wall than sell the lumber for $500. Yeah. So I get it more value that way. But you can take your chainsaw and go to your wood lot, trim out some places, get you products from the places you're going to trim to, say, build stuff later. And another thing I do is services. Like I grew up doing a ton of things like fencing, building outdoor sheds and stuff for people like that. So I will do contracting services on other people's places to help them with their farm for some of my income. I do crafts and things like that with wood, like log furniture.
Hey, Ken. Yeah, go ahead.
Keep going.
Yeah, keep going. I'm responding to it.
Yep. Okay. And I also do things like I make fishing lures, have natural feathers. There's a ton of just random crafts. I could keep going on and on about crafts, but I guess that's one subject there. So crafting, you can use what's on your property to make things. Also, you can sell mulch and dirt if you have an excess. And if you don't have an excess of mulch, make you some piles of I'm saying mulch, but I mean compost, sorry. Right, so make you some piles with brush and different things and make you some cold compost piles, just huge piles. Keep piling it up. 2 or 3 years later, that's going to be rich black dirt. Yeah. I'll take hay bales, brush, food products. Food products are better in a hot compost pile, though. Right. And that's more immediate return. You can sell compost teas, living soil, things like that. Yeah. If you have a property that has rocks, which we are fortunate enough to be basically on a mountain. Yep. So you can collect rocks, stack them on pallets. People will buy those for landscaping and things like that. I have some rocks that I do.
I'm not going to sell my rocks, but yeah, there are people that do.
I love to use my rocks too. I try to get rid of things that I see as a resource.
Yeah.
But everything I see as a resource, other people do too, and they'll pay you for that.
Yeah.
Some of the other things we do for profit on our farm is livestock. Obviously, we can sell animals and meat, but a lot of people don't have, that option.
Mm-hmm.
So what you can do is, like you guys were talking about the other day, canning and making jellies and jams.
Yeah.
That's an excellent thing too. Make a bunch of jams for your farmers markets, breads, natural bread. There's tons of things that is within our lifestyle that we're just doing for ourselves that we can also market to other people. It's almost as if you can market the whole lifestyle. It sounds weird, but people want the products we're making. We're making natural, more organic type of things. Some people I know do good at making soap, like goat's milk soap,
right?
Things like that. And that's easy to do.
Yeah.
Yep. I have she's a cousin, I guess you'd call her. She does excellent with her goats and her goat's milk soap. That's like basically all she does. And that's the thing. So if you're gonna do livestock, though, a lot of people just want to get the goats and the sheep and the chickens and the pigs because they think that's the thing. They just want all the animals. But what are you gonna do with the animals? So you can't eat all of them. I mean, that's kind of rude just to get them only to eat.
Yeah.
But what I do is I try to find a niche of animal that's going to be valuable to the person buying them, something unique and valuable.
Yeah.
Instead of just meat rabbits, I'll try to buy a really specific, like a California, really nice bred rabbit. Yeah. That way for reselling and the fur, it's more valuable.
Yeah.
Instead of just buying regular chickens, buy like a really nice bred heritage thing that comes from a really nice breeder.
Yeah.
It'll cost you a tiny bit more up front, but the return is going to pay you well.
Yeah.
I think. And so
when you were talking about the goat's milk soaps and things like that, we have a good friend that raised a goat dairy herd and still has a dairy herd. But when she started, her ambition was to have a goat dairy with all of the dairy products, and which was cheeses, milk, ice creams, just things like that. And then she found out for all of the hassle that she had to go through with USDA and all of that to have all of that dairy products certified. She just started making soaps and lotions and things like that with it, and didn't have any of that to worry about, and it was more profitable on top of it. So she shifted her whole entire operation over to that.
You just find out what works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Find out what works and what your local county and government's going to let you do.
Yeah.
The cottage food laws really help in some aspect, but it doesn't cover everything.
Right. Yeah, our daughter was looking at doing, you'd mentioned the other day, microgreens and things like that. And she was looking at doing some of that. And the cottage laws did cover some ways of doing that, but not others. You just had to kind of pay attention to what they would allow. And it's something that people make really good money on that. But like anything else, if you're in business, you've got to treat it like a business and be ambitious with it and actually be proactive with it. It's just, they don't come and looking for you to see if you've got stuff. You've got to kind of promote it. So
exactly.
We had what else was I going to say? There was something else too. Oh yeah, we talked about the jams and jellies. The jelly thing is something that fits into the cottage laws real easy, and I can tell you that if we made nothing but jalapeno jelly, we could stay sold out of that all the time. It is such good stuff. Everybody that we let sample it's like, oh, can I have more of that?
That's funny. That's the thing though. If you find like one of those products that you can really sell, that's excellent.
Yeah.
I bet the jam is really good. The jalapeno jelly. That's the thing. The folks that have the really nice flashy booths at the farmers markets, if you notice, the really good sellers, they'll have giant boxes under the table of a certain product. That's their main seller. They're unloading tons of it. but they do have their little fancy displays on the side, but they have a certain 2 or 3 products that they're really just selling and selling.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they're being a successful farmer's market setup versus person that's trying to get little fancy packages, and that's the only thing they do. You really have to, like one lady a long time ago said, you want the McDonald's effect. You want to make certain products, you're not going to make a fortune on each one, but over time you're going to sell so many of them that's going to make your money.
Yeah.
And when folks buy the little fancy boxes from you, that's a nice little bit of profit.
Yeah.
But I think those 2 or 3 niche products that you can do, you're comfortable doing at your home or your farm or whatever, that's where it's at.
Okay, so Ken came on here a little bit, and he said, when is Casey's next event? He was talking about at the beginning of the live. I'm sure you're talking about the homesteading October thing. So why don't you go ahead and tell a little bit about that again? Then we're going to talk a little bit about your Mountain Man Ministry thing. Okay. Okay.
Awesome.
Ken,
Thank you. Yep. So thank you, Ken. That's a good question. My next event is October 10th and 11th. And that's in Richmond, Missouri at the Ray County Fairgrounds. We go from about 11 in the morning till about 5 at night, but I do have some events after after closing each day. We're going to have meet and greets with certain people and certain presentations. But what we have this year is a couple cool surprises. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Jacob with Don't Tell the Bishop, but he's that funny Amish guy. You guys ought to look him up if you've never seen him before. It's called Jacob. Jacob with Don't Tell the Bishop.
Don't Tell the Bishop?
Yep.
Okay, so what's that going to be all about? Or is it too big of a secret?
He's kind of a secret, but he's a crazy Amish filler, and he's coming all the way from about Pennsylvania, I think, to visit with us at the event.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he's kind of a comic relief, but he's pretty knowledgeable in and of itself. But our main presentations are going to be things like loom weaving. We have these folks that are going to come with old-fashioned looms that you can weave your rugs and your different kind of placemats.
Okay.
We're going to have spoon carving, which is basically green wood crafting, where you take green wood and carve it into shapes, make spoons and bowls and things like that.
Okay.
We have a blacksmith coming from Cameron. It's called the Cameron School of Blacksmithing.
All right.
That's a really good outfit, and they're bringing displays. They're going to do live demonstrations on how to make stuff, and they have products to sell too, but it's excellent just to sit there and watch them and ask them questions. We have a few different cool things. I have a bee presentation, and they're going to teach us basically the beginning stages of starting your bee farm. I'm interested in it myself, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have him do the beginning stages of beekeeping. Then in consecutive events, we're going to go deeper into the subject. Okay. But so we use the Ray County Fairgrounds because in my town, the fairgrounds is not getting as much hubbub as I think it should. It's another kind of analogy for the way farming is getting lost to time. The fairground is not being used like I think it should be. So part of my mission with these events is getting the fairgrounds up and going like it used to be. There used to be rodeos and things like that, but they don't do that anymore. I'm not sure why. Yeah. But we have a rodeo in the works too, by the way, which I haven't announced that yet. That's going to be different. Now, but my event is we're like a nonprofit based on spreading knowledge and skills for farming and homesteading. And the way my event's different is I don't charge for general admission, where most homesteading events they charge like $25 or even more. I've heard $40 a ticket for some homesteading events around Missouri. And so I believe in giving this knowledge out to folks for free. And if I have to pay for it myself, that's fine. I'll try to find sponsors or whatever I can. But I don't think there should be a paywall to spread this knowledge and the information.
Yeah. That's
so
good.
And things like canning and different various skills that we can teach in a short time of about 45 minutes to an hour, that might help somebody literally eat in the future.
Right.
I think it could. And so, so do you have any questions about the event? I can probably answer specifics, but that's kind of the gist of it.
So any of you out there that are listening to this, if you have any questions about that, go ahead and ask. I'm going to ask a couple of questions about it myself. Do you have an email list that you are able to send out to the people that have been in touch with you in some way or the other? Do you have any kind of a regular way of communicating to them?
We are developing a newsletter through the Homesteading in Missouri events and the Facebook group. Okay. And I can also take an email address and add it to my my personal email list, and I will start sending out information, but I don't have an official email newsletter thing set up yet, which you may be able to help me with that, matter of fact.
Well, what I probably could do is, if you're I've got a pretty extensive email list, and we it's all dependent upon people opening their emails, but we get a pretty good open rate on it, maybe 25% on average, which is pretty astounding, actually, according to the experts on that. But but if you can provide either links to pages or somewhere where you have the information, or even possibly like a PDF or something like that of some of your things, I can add links to that into the newsletters that I send out, and that'll help a little bit. Maybe.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about that later.
Everything helps. And the kind of another thing about the events, it's kind of like a for us, by us type of deal. So I figure if we're going to build community, we can all help each other. And basically, once we get everybody involved and everybody knows about the thing, we won't have to advertise. But for now, every little bit counts.
Right.
And I even tell folks I could send them flyers to hang up in their local areas, but I'm kind of old school. I will hang flyers around the hardware stores and the gas stations. Facebook is great for marketing too, but I like to do it the old-fashioned way. Just get out there, actually hand flyers to people when you can, stuff like that. Yeah, I think that's a cool way to not only advertise, but it's a way to strike a conversation up. You might teach somebody something right on the spot. You never know.
Yeah,
they might have questions that you didn't think about.
Yeah.
So
Richmond, where you have this event, is, for those of you out there that aren't real familiar with the area, you're just east of Kansas City, probably 40 miles, maybe something like that.
Yep, I think we're about 45 miles east. We're slightly northeast of Kansas City. Yep.
Okay, so if you're at Arrowhead Stadium, about 45 miles southeast, you say?
Northeast. Yep. I think we're more east than north, but yep, we're right out there.
Okay. All right. So that's generally where it's at. Ray County, I guess, is the county, and then Richmond is the town. And so we've always been busy in the fall and never have been able to get up there. I know you wanted us to come up there last time. It was just trying to squeeze it. We were just starting our house then, and we were trying to beat some cold weather. Which, I mean, in October, it doesn't seem like you should be talking about beating cold weather, but we had a lot of stuff to do before cold weather hit, so it didn't work. But I appreciate you being on here. Tell hi to Megan and the kids.
Yes.
And I mean, I think I'd love to do this again sometime. Maybe cover a different subject, maybe more in depth or something. You can kind of be thinking about that. Anybody that's out there in the audience, if you have any kind of questions or suggestions on what some other topics that we might cover, go ahead and put them in there. If we know something about them, we'll tell you. If we don't know anything about them, we'll tell you that too. So anything else you want to say in closing?
Let's see. I think remember, my event is October 10th and 11th in Richmond, Missouri at the Ray County Fairgrounds.
Yep.
And also, if you want to look up our Facebook group, it is Homesteading in Missouri with the 3 little sunflowers. That's how I always tell people.
Okay.
And basically, I organize the event and all my groups and stuff through my ministry, which is the Fraternal Order of the Mountain Man Ministries Limited.
And do you have a website with that?
I don't have a website yet. I'm still building that.
Okay.
That's a toss-up too. When you're busy farming and homesteading, I don't have time to do a lot of my digital stuff.
Right.
But
Right.
I need to do both.
Yeah.
That's just that. But yeah, you all can get a hold of me. I'll give Martin the email address and all that, and go from there.
Okay.
All right.
And what we'll do, tell you what, I'm going to probably go ahead and end the live stream here unless anybody has any last minute questions. Casey, why don't you hang on a little bit? We'll kind of talk about that right on the computer here and kind of discuss what we need to do to get that information up there. So last moment, anybody have any other questions? We appreciate you coming in and joining with us tonight.
Yeah.
I had fun. I don't know if any of the rest of you did, but I did.
Thank you.
So, all right, I'm going to end it. We'll continue the conversation here, Casey.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Oh, that's a touch. My computer's not a touch screen.
He is touching the
I'm
screen.
sitting there tapping on the thing and can't get it to stop.
You're so funny.
Yeah.